Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's Midwife Reviews video is going to be of a YouTuber who is near and dear to my heart. I wanted to have kind of a reaction review of Sarah's Day's video from July 25th, 2018, so about a year ago, called How I Healed Myself Naturally, Cervical Dysplasia CIN 3 High Grade. I'll link it below if you want to watch the full video for yourself. But before I get started, I wanted to say that I love Sarah's Day. She is, at this point, the only YouTuber I watch every time she uploads a video. And I also watch her videos all the way through. So I really love her. Yeah, she's 26 years old. And usually I do kind of have a problem with 20-somethings, preaching how they live a healthy life, but not her. And I'm not really sure why. I think, a lot of what she talks about doesn't have a whole lot of relevance to my life. I'm 45, she's 26, but I kind of can't help it. She seems like such a funny, kind, down-to-earth human being, and I really just want to support her because I think she's pretty cool. I think one of the reasons I love her is because I wish I had been that together at 26 instead of the total hot mess that I was. I love her use of healthy nutrition and healthy lifestyle to heal her body and to improve her overall general health. I wish more people who came into my clinic were open to doing that. And so I just adore her. I think she's great. I really enjoyed following her pregnancy, her birth story. I was cheering for her the whole time. As someone who is also the mom of a young child, that part of my life is still really fresh in my mind. I had my son when I was almost 41, so at 45, I have a 4-year-old at home. So the whole pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding, baby, that wasn't so long ago for me. I love her use of nutrition and healthy living to help keep her body in optimal condition. I happen to try to encourage this in my own clinic before prescribing medications unless they are truly warranted, and not that many people are all that interested. So it's one of the reasons why I keep coming back to her channel. It makes me kind of just want to have her channel directly into the minds of my young patients. But without further ado, let's get started.
Issue, there's just so much backlash and judgment that comes with it, but I'm really trying to not think about that and think about you guys and the girls who are watching this video who are currently going through this, because when I found out that I had cervical dysplasia, all I was doing was just researching every single night. So I'm making this video for my past self. I'm going to go through everything with you guys, how I healed myself. So with any kind of health issue, obviously I'm not a medical professional, I'm not a doctor. All I'm doing is sitting here and telling you my story and what I did. Take from that what you will, but especially with your serious health issues, I highly recommend and highly advise you and encourage you to go to your medical professional, like your gynecologist and your doctors or whoever you want to go to, and listen to their advice.
Good job, Sarah. I am so glad that she started this video with the disclaimer to seek out medical care and follow the advice of your medical professional when receiving a troubling diagnosis. Remember, it is always okay to seek out a second opinion. So if you are concerned about the advice that your doctor is giving you and they want you to embark on some kind of a treatment that seems really scary to you, you can get a second opinion. It is okay, and it is something that you actually probably should do to make sure that you are really doing the right thing for your body.
So back in December, I had a routine pap smear, and unfortunately it came back with abnormal results. And I got a call from my doctor and she was like, hi, is this a good time to talk? I'm really sorry to tell you, but your pap smear results have come back with abnormal cells present. I wish I had my actual reports here to read, but from my pap smear results only, it said I had a lot of abnormal cells, a high amount of, and then I had to book in with a specialist gynecologist, and then with him I had to have a colposcopy, a biopsy, and another pap smear. I go into the gynecologist gynecologist and he has to do a colposcopy, which means he has like these crazy binoculars. You have to like open your legs and he looks at your cervix. But he puts this dye stuff on your cervix. If you have abnormal cells, like precancerous cells, it will light up. So he looks in there and he says, yes, from his vision, it looks like I have high-grade cervical dysplasia, so CIN 3. So from there, he said it's a really good idea for us to take a biopsy, which is where they get like a chunk sample from your cervix and they send it off for testing. The test results came back and he said, yes, you do have CIN 3. I went into him again and we had a conversation. Treatment for CIN 3 may include cryotherapy, laser therapy, loop procedure, which is called LEAP, or cone biopsy. CIN 3 is sometimes called high-grade or severe dysplasia. The cells are definitely there, they're covering a lot of my cervix, and he wanted me to get the LEAP procedure, which is pretty much, in like layman's terms, they slice off a really thin layer of your cervix and they remove it and they hopefully get all of the cells out of there so you don't have any abnormal cells and they can't develop into cancer.
That was a pretty good explanation of colposcopy and LEAP by a patient, actually. The dye she talks about is acetic acid, vinegar. Given the date that this was posted and the references to when the process happened, I'm gonna guess that she was like 23 or 24 at the time that this all happened, knowing that she's 26 now. So the guidelines that we use in the United States are from the ASCCP, and they recommend something like a LEAP for CIN3. It is considered to be the preferred treatment. But observation with colposcopy and cytology every 6 months for a year is acceptable. So if you look at Up to Date, which is the kind of medical reference that we use to kind of look at all the most recent research, they specifically talk about having a discussion with young women about these procedures because they can impact future childbearing. LEAP can have really significant consequences in pregnancy. The thing that we worry the most about is something called an incompetent cervix. And I actually hate that term because your cervix is not incompetent. It's not that it can't do its job because it doesn't want to. The cervix is perfectly competent, but the procedures that we have done may destroy its ability to do its job correctly. So what happens is that removal of the layer of the cervix can actually prevent it from fully closing. And what can happen during pregnancy is that it can start to open prematurely and can lead to premature labor and premature birth. The other concern is that it can cause a lot of scar tissue to form in the cervix, which then makes it really difficult for the cervix to dilate during labor. And if we want the cervix to dilate during labor, we actually have to manually break up the scar tissue with our fingers, which can be extremely painful for the laboring woman and doesn't always work, to be honest. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Usually it works, but sometimes it doesn't.
I'm open to getting the LEAP procedure eventually, and in the back of my mind I thought that's what I was going to have to do because I'm all for believing in myself, but something like this, it's so out of my area of expertise. At this point I was like, I'm so healthy, like why would my body do this to me? So pretty much I said to him, can you please give me a time frame that I can just dedicate my life to eating healthy and changing my life and trying to heal my cervix naturally? And obviously he has a duty of care, so he was a little bit hesitant. He was like, I don't want to send you home and just say like, yeah, you'll be fine, and then you come back and it's gotten even worse. But I kind of like told him my game plan and I said how serious I was and I wouldn't feel comfortable just diving straight into the LEAP procedure. So he said, okay, I'll give you 3 months. I went hardcore. I talked to my friends who had cervical dysplasia. I talked to my mum who had cervical dysplasia. I just gathered any information I could and I completely revamped my nutrition, my lifestyle, and my supplementation. Often more prone to getting issues like this and cervical dysplasia if you have a low immune system. And that totally makes sense to me because before I found out I had cervical dysplasia, I was going through so much stuff with my body. So I got a staph infection. I was traveling around loads, doing meetups, and I was just so busy work-wise, severely exhausted, and essentially I had no immune system because when you get a staph infection and you take antibiotics, it just ruins your gut health. So that was the first thing I tried to think about. I was like, okay, I obviously have a low immune system. Even if I don't have a cold, I must have a low immune system. And then second to that was inflammation and antioxidants. So with most diseases thrive in an inflammatory environment. So I was determined to make my body as anti-inflammatory as possible, and then antioxidants. So I wanted to fuel and just pump my body with as much antioxidants as I could, because antioxidants can fight free radicals in the body, which essentially are precancerous cells, cervical dysplasia.
Low immune system. She says this a lot. You know, it sounds like she was under a lot of stress, which can lead to some mild immune suppression. I think that it's important to be quite clear that having some mild immune suppression is not the same as being immunocompromised. Being immunocompromised means that you have an inability to fight infection from a disease like HIV, from chemotherapy wiping out your rapidly dividing cells, which includes your white blood cells. It's also worth noting that the antibiotics she took for her staph infection may have saved her life. I did watch those videos and I remember feeling like, girl, get to the hospital, get some antibiotics, you're gonna die. So if anything, that infection actually put her immune system into overdrive to try to fight it, but it couldn't, which is why she needed the antibiotics. It is true that about 75% of your immune system is in your gut, and when you disrupt your gut biota through things like antibiotics, it can impact your ability to fight infections for a time. But we are extremely resilient creatures, and so the occasional use of antibiotics is really unlikely to destroy your immune system. Maybe if you take antibiotics all the time, there's more likely that you're gonna have more issues with gut health and overall physical health. And I say this as someone who really avoids taking antibiotics unless I really need them. So I agree with her in that we want to avoid unnecessary use of antibiotics, but I disagree that the fact that she had to take antibiotics for this staph infection is the reason why she had cervical dysplasia, or is one of the reasons why she had cervical dysplasia. So the thing that troubled me about this video is that there's no mention of HPV. HPV, human papillomavirus, is the cause of almost all cases of cervical dysplasia and cervical cancer. So let's talk for a moment about the natural history of cervical dysplasia. Cervical dysplasia that leads to cervical cancer is almost always caused by HPV. Given Sarah's age, I am surprised that she wasn't vaccinated. Now, not everyone opts for the HPV vaccine, but if you have the option, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Does the HPV vaccine prevent all cases of cervical cancer or cervical dysplasia? No. And it's quite possible that she was vaccinated and was infected with one of the strains that is not covered in the vaccine. Does the vaccine dramatically reduce your chance of having cervical dysplasia or cervical cancer? Hell yes. And if you are under 45 years old and have not been vaccinated, or have had an abnormal pap smear and have not been vaccinated, you need to talk to your doctor about getting the vaccine. HPV is very common, and it is difficult to prevent transmission with condom use alone because it is transmitted skin to skin, and it does not have to be genital to genital. And so this is why vaccination is so important, and ideally getting vaccinated before you are exposed to the virus. But the other thing to know is that a healthy immune system is probably going to clear the HPV virus on its own in 18 months to 2 years. The more virulent strains, which are covered by the vaccine, can be harder for the body to clear, and so they are more likely to progress to cervical dysplasia and cancer. And that is why those strains are in the vaccine.
I may as well talk about supplementation. The doses that I took were under the guidance of my gynecologist and my naturopath. I basically made my own schedule and my own game plan, and then I emailed it to both doctors and I said, do you approve this? And they said, yes, go ahead, good luck.
So I'm really glad to hear that she openly talked about her desire to use supplements and natural methods with her healthcare providers. I think that her gynecologist probably looked at the PAP guidelines for Australia, which may be different from the PAP guidelines in the United States, which is why he might have wanted to see her in 3 months instead of 6 months, which might be what we would do with observation here. And he probably saw that he had some time, so if you want to try some natural methods, have at it. He also probably understood that over time, there was a good chance this was going to regress on its own. I'll get to that in a few minutes.
I wanted to create an environment in my gut and in my body that disease or abnormal cells just couldn't thrive. So I've always eaten really healthy. You guys know that. At that point, I was kind of like buying some things organic and then like other things, not really worrying about it. But I just wanted to make sure I was getting as much nutrients and vitamins and minerals from the food that I was eating into my body as I could. And a lot of research shows that organic food actually has more nutrients than non-organic food because of the soil that it's grown.
Sorry, Sarah. There is no solid evidence to support that organic produce is higher in nutrient density than conventionally grown produce. Unless you are buying from a small local farm, you are getting the same poor soil quality from monoculture agriculture, whether you're buying organic or conventional. And to make things worse, organic and conventional monoculture agriculture, those fields are often right next to each other. One field is being sprayed with pesticides, the other one is not being sprayed with pesticides, but pesticides are particleized into the air. You don't think the wind blows pesticides from the conventional field into the organic field? Of course it does. Now, is there going to be a lower parts per million of pesticides in the organic? Probably. And certain types of produce are more prone to absorption of the pesticides than others. So you can definitely check out the, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 if you want to know which ones are which. But are you getting more nutrient density out of organic produce? No, you're not.
So from then on, I just took a really gentle approach to my whole life. I got more sleep. I would swap out some of my sprint sessions for Pilates, or I would just stretch at home. I wouldn't pressure myself to train if I didn't feel like it. And I just really tried to be gentle and kind to my body and my mind and just think positively. So they're kind of like the lifestyle changes I made. And I know this all sounds so easy, but it was a really big effort, especially with like the food and the supplementation. At this point in my life, it was my number one stress. I was thinking about it all of the time. It was dictating everything I did. I was trying so hard to not let it affect my mood and stress me out, because stress is poison to the body. And I was trying to think positively and even just saying like positive affirmations to myself. I prayed a lot. My sisters prayed over me. My mum prayed over me. This is all I can do. It's in God's hands now. Like, it is what it is.
Her immune boosting supplements may or may not have helped her, but her self-care in the form of sleep, moderating her exercise, and taking time to focus and stay centered probably did more to reduce her cortisol and improve her immunity than any amount of supplementing ever could. So let's talk about treatment for cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, or CIN, and try to discern exactly what happened here. Was this a miracle, or was this a coincidence based on the natural progression of HPV infection and CIN? CIN3 is extremely serious. It can and often does progress to cervical cancer. But how often is actually somewhat related to age. So when we are speaking of CIN3 generally across populations from up to date, for CIN3, the estimated spontaneous regression rate is 32 to 47%, with 12 to 40% progressing to invasive cancer if untreated. When discussing young women especially, high-grade CIN is less likely to progress to cancer in young women and may regress. For CIN3 in women ages 20 to 24 years, the estimated progression rate from CIN3 to cancer in 1 year is 0.5%. The rate increases with age, reaching 10% per year for women age 80 and older. So a young, healthy immune system was just as likely to do the job as all those expensive supplements that she took. Now, great on Sarah for taking her health into her own hands. I love this about her. I wish more of my own patients would do this. Statistics are, of course, only statistics until you are the statistics. So I understand how that can impact your decision making. It also does not mean that we need to take the path of higher intervention all the time before all other things. So I want to say thank you to Sarah for sharing her story. I think that it's something that young women really need to hear. When you get the scary news of an abnormal pap smear, I hope that Sarah's positive experience will help you find a healthcare provider who will listen to you. So I want to say thank you, Sarah, for sharing your experience with the over 1 million girls and women who watch your channel every week. And I hope that if they get a scary diagnosis of a high-grade lesion on their pap smear, they will find healthcare providers who were as kind and supportive as yours were and are able to take that woman's individual needs under advisement rather than trying to just create a blanket treatment. I also encourage all of you out there who follow and love Sarah to be smart and find a doctor or healthcare provider who listens to you. Don't be afraid to get a second opinion if you feel your needs are not being met or you're just unsure about the things that you're hearing. Lastly, the 2 best ways to prevent cervical cancer are vaccination and having your routine pap smears. Routine pap smears in the United States start at the age of 21. It can be done earlier if there are symptoms to suggest that this test may give us useful information. So I encourage you all to be really proactive about your health in this way. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If there are other YouTube videos or other YouTubers whose health information you would like me to review, please let me know down in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, and feel free to ask any questions. And if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get lots more interesting videos just like this one. Ring that little bell so that you get notified whenever I post new content. And I'll see you guys next week. Have a great day.